When justice becomes a crime, the truth behind Pelican Bay Supermax. The echo of a man's scream rattles down a long, cold hallway. It's past midnight at Pelican Bay State Prison, America's most feared Supermax. Inside a solitary confinement cell, a man named Darius Cole slams his fists against the steel door until his knuckles split open. He's been locked in there for 11 years. No sunlight. No human touch. No voice except his own. But tonight, something inside Darius finally breaks. He's yelling, begging for a guard, any guard, to listen. "I didn't do this," he screams. "You framed me." The officers outside don't answer. They watch from a control booth, eyes blank behind glass. On the monitor, Darius's cell is small, gray, and silent, except for the faint flicker of a camera light. Then the sound cuts out. And for the next 7 minutes, there's no record of what happens inside that cell. When the video feed returns, Darius is on the floor, blood pooling beneath his head. The official report will later say, suicide. But other inmates whisper something different. They say that night wasn't suicide, it was justice turned into a crime. Because at Pelican Bay, justice doesn't always mean right. Sometimes it means revenge. Years before that night, Darius Cole was known as a neighborhood protector in Oakland. He grew up around violence, but he always tried to keep kids out of it. When a close friend got caught up in a gang case, Darius refused to testify against him, and that choice would change his life forever. Police raided his apartment 2 days later. They claimed to have found illegal weapons in his closet, weapons Darius swore he'd never seen. The system didn't care. The district attorney painted him as a community threat, and in court, his lawyer barely spoke a word. 15 years. No parole. Straight to Pelican Bay Supermax. From the moment he arrived, guards treated him differently. Another so-called activist, one of them said, tightening the cuffs until they cut his wrists. Inside the Security Housing Unit, or SHU, Darius lived in total isolation, 22 hours a day locked in a cell the size of a parking space. No phone calls. No visits. No sunlight. The only time he left was for a shower or a walk in a concrete yard, the size of a dog kennel. But what broke him wasn't the silence, it was the system itself. He watched men go insane from loneliness. He saw guards taunt them, cut their mail, even destroy their legal papers. They called it behavior management. Darius called it torture. When he tried to file complaints, they mysteriously vanished. When he spoke to an investigator, he was moved to another block, one known for accidents. That's when Darius realized something dark. Pelican Bay wasn't built just to hold criminals. It was built to break them. Still, he refused to give up. Using scraps of paper, he wrote letters, hundreds of them, to journalists, lawyers, and anyone who'd listen. He described the abuse, the cover-ups, the deaths no one talked about. One of those letters made it to an investigative reporter in Los Angeles. She began asking questions, pushing for access to the prison. That's when the threats started. A guard slipped Darius a note through the mail slot. "Stop writing, or you'll disappear like the others." Darius didn't stop. And that's when everything spiraled. One morning, he woke to find his cell flooded with freezing water. Papers floated everywhere, his letters, his evidence, all ruined. The guard said a pipe burst. But Darius knew better. 3 days later, the same guard came back with a smile. "You think anyone cares what happens here?" he said. "You're not a victim, Cole. You're just practice." That night, the cameras glitched. And for the next 7 minutes, the same 7 minutes missing from the record, something happened that would shake the prison system to its core. When the lights came back on, Darius Cole was dead. And outside those walls, the reporter who had been reading his letters got an anonymous envelope, one containing a flash drive labeled only with 3 words: Pelican Bay Truth. The footage on it would expose more than just one man's death. It would reveal a system built to hide its own crimes. But before that footage could reach the public, something strange happened. The reporter vanished. And that's where this story truly begins. Because what happened next would make even the people who built Pelican Bay start to question whether justice had gone too far. 2 weeks after Darius Cole's death, a storm rolled across Crescent City, the small coastal town that hides Pelican Bay behind its fog. Reporters weren't allowed anywhere near the facility. But one woman, Rachel Mendez, an investigative journalist from Los Angeles, wasn't ready to let go. Rachel had received Darius's final letter just days before he died. Inside he wrote, "If you're reading this, it means they got to me. But the truth is buried here, under concrete and silence. Don't trust anyone in uniform." Attached to the letter was a small flash drive. When Rachel plugged it in, the screen lit up with hours of footage. grainy videos, secret audio recordings, and scanned reports stamped confidential. But one clip stood out. It showed a guard punching Darius through the meal slot, a clear violation of protocol, while another laughed in the background. You could hear Darius shouting, "This is justice?" before the video cut to static. Rachel knew this was big. But it wasn't just about one inmate's death, it was about a pattern. Files on the drive named other prisoners, each listed as suicide. The same guards. The same missing footage. The same story. She printed everything out, packed her camera, and drove north toward Pelican Bay. As she passed the last gas station, a local clerk warned her. "Ma'am, people who dig too deep into that place don't come back talking to." Rachel smiled nervously. "Then I guess I'll be the first." At the prison gates, the air was thick with salt and rain. Razor wire coiled like silver snakes above her head. The public relations officer who met her was polite but cold. "Pelican Bay doesn't do interviews," he said. "We have nothing to hide, but everything here is secure." Rachel handed him her credentials. "Then you won't mind if I take a quick look inside?" He hesitated. "I'll see what I can do." For 2 hours she waited in her car. Then a guard finally waved her through. She was given a tour, but not the one she expected. They showed her spotless hallways, quiet cell blocks, and empty yards. Everything looked perfect, almost staged. But Rachel noticed something off. Every camera light she passed was off. Every inmate she tried to speak to was suddenly unavailable. And every file she asked for couldn't be located. Still, she recorded everything: the silence, the faces, the smell of bleach in the air. As she was escorted out, a sergeant leaned in and whispered, "Whatever story you think you're writing, don't. Some truths aren't meant to see daylight." Rachel's heart pounded. She nodded, pretending to understand. But she already knew she'd come too far to turn back. That night, in her motel room, she opened her laptop and compared Darius's footage with the official reports. The dates didn't match. Some videos were time-stamped before the supposed incidents even happened. It was proof of tampering, and it pointed to something much larger. She started drafting her article. When Justice Becomes a Crime, Inside Pelican Bay's System of Silence. Just as she was about to hit save, her phone buzzed. A known number. She hesitated, then answered. A voice whispered, "You don't know who you're dealing with. Stop now." Then the line went dead. Rachel froze. Outside her window, a black SUV idled under the flickering motel sign. She pulled the curtain shut and backed away from the glass. Her heart raced. She saved the files to a hidden drive, slipped it inside her bag, and wrote one last note to herself. "If anything happens, send everything to the Tribune." She waited. The SUV didn't move. But when she woke up the next morning, her laptop was gone. The window was still locked from the inside. And on the desk, in place of her computer, was a folded piece of paper with just 4 words. "You were warned, Rachel." She felt her stomach drop. The story wasn't just about Darius anymore. It was about everyone trapped in a system that punished the truth, and now, it seemed, that system had turned its eyes on her. But Rachel wasn't done. Not yet. If justice had become a crime inside Pelican Bay, she was about to expose every person behind it. Even if it meant becoming their next target. Rachel didn't go home. Instead, she drove deeper north, toward Crescent City's coastline, where the fog rolled over the highway like smoke. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. The note left in her motel room still burned in her mind. "You were warned, Rachel." Someone knew who she was. Someone wanted her silent. She parked by the shore, opened her bag, and double-checked the small flash drive Darius had sent. It was still there. Her laptop might be gone, but the truth was safe, for now. That night, she made one decision. If they were going to bury this story, they'd have to bury her with it. Rachel found a payphone at a rundown diner and called a contact she'd met years ago. Eli Navarro, a former corrections officer who had worked at Pelican Bay before quitting under mysterious circumstances. When he picked up, his voice was low. "You shouldn't have called me here." "Eli," she said quickly. "I have proof, about Darius Cole. The abuse. The cover-ups. I just need someone from the inside to confirm it." Silence. Then he sighed. "You have no idea what you're playing with. That place doesn't just hide violence, it runs on it." "What do you mean?" Eli hesitated. Then his voice cracked slightly. "We were told to keep certain inmates quiet. High-risk agitators, they called them. If they filed too many complaints, if they talked to reporters, we handled it." Rachel's chest tightened. "Handled it how?" "Sometimes we took them to D Block," he whispered. "No cameras, no witnesses. I walked out because I couldn't take it anymore. But most of the others, they're still there. Rachel could hear fear in his voice. Will you meet me? Please. I just need a statement. There was a pause. Then Eli said, tomorrow night. Near the old logging yard off Highway 101. Come alone. The line went dead. The next night Rachel arrived early. The air was damp, the moon half hidden behind clouds. She parked her car under a broken light pole and waited. At 10:07 p.m., a figure appeared, tall, heavy-set, wearing a black hoodie. Eli? She called softly. He stepped closer, hands shaking as he lit a cigarette. You shouldn't have come. You said you'd talk. He exhaled smoke, eyes darting around. They know I'm here. If they find me, I'm finished. Rachel leaned forward. Who's they? The Green Wall, he whispered. It's what we called them. A group of officers who run things inside Pelican Bay, above the rules, above the law. They protect each other no matter what they do. Assaults, falsified reports, even deaths, all covered up. Rachel hit record on her hidden microphone. Do you have proof? Eli nodded. In my locker. Old shift logs, photos. I kept copies just in case. I'll give them to you, but after tonight, I'm disappearing. Before Rachel could respond, a pair of headlights cut through the darkness. A black SUV rolled slowly toward them. Eli's face went pale. They found us, he muttered. Get in. Rachel yelled, rushing toward her car. Eli hesitated for a moment, then followed. Tires screeched as she sped down the road, the SUV's lights blinding them from behind. Who are they? She shouted over the roar of the engine. Internal affairs, Eli said. Or at least that's what they claim to be. The SUV rammed their bumper. Rachel swerved hard, narrowly avoiding a tree. Eli reached into his jacket and threw a small envelope onto her lap. If I don't make it, take this to the Tribune. The SUV slammed them again. Glass shattered. The car spun and crashed into a ditch. Everything went black. When Rachel woke up, she was in the hospital. Her head ached, her vision blurry. A nurse told her she'd been lucky. Her car had been found wrecked along the highway. But Eli was gone. There was no record of him in the police report. No mention of the SUV. No envelope. It was as if he never existed. Rachel sat up, panic flooding her chest. Where's my bag? My flash drive. The nurse looked confused. Ma'am, you didn't have any belongings when they brought you in. That's when Rachel realized, someone had cleaned everything up. The footage, the letters, the recordings, gone. But as she looked down, she noticed something strange. Her right hand was clenched tightly around a folded piece of paper. Inside, written in shaky pen, were 5 words. He didn't die for nothing. Rachel froze. Eli must have slipped it into her hand before the crash. And underneath the note was a phone number. It was local, Crescent City area code. Rachel's pulse quickened. She knew what she had to do. She wasn't just going to tell Darius's story anymore. She was going to finish what he started, and expose the Green Wall for good. Rachel sat in her car outside a gas station, hands trembling as she stared at the note again. 5 words. A single phone number. He didn't die for nothing. The rain tapped softly against the windshield, blurring the neon lights outside. She took a deep breath and dialed the number. The line clicked. For a moment there was nothing but static, then a voice, deep and careful. Who gave you this number? Rachel swallowed. Eli Navarro. He said you could help me. A long pause followed. Then the man spoke again. Eli's gone, isn't he? Rachel hesitated. I think so. I was with him the night he... I know, the man interrupted. I saw it. Rachel's chest tightened. Who are you? Someone who's been trying to expose the same thing you are, he said. Name's Marcus Vega. I did 15 years in Pelican Bay. SHU unit. I knew Darius. Rachel's breath caught. You knew him? I was in the cell next to his. I heard everything the night he died. The words hit Rachel like a wave. Tell me what happened. Marcus exhaled sharply. He was alive when they pulled the camera feed. I remember his voice. He kept shouting, this isn't justice. Then, it went quiet. When they brought him out, he was gone. Everyone knew it wasn't suicide. The guards made an example out of him. Rachel could hear him pacing on the other end. They called it behavioral control. Said it was to keep order. But that wasn't justice. That was payback. She stared out the window, her reflection pale under the flickering light. Do you have proof? I've got more than that, Marcus said. When I got out, I took something with me. The Green Wall thinks it's destroyed, but I've got the last copy. Meet me tomorrow night. Docks behind Crescent Harbor. Come alone. The call ended. Rachel's heart pounded. She'd already lost Darius, lost Eli. She couldn't afford to lose this lead too. This was her one chance. The next night, fog rolled in thick over the harbor. Waves slapped against the wooden posts as Rachel approached the docks. Every sound made her flinch, the hum of a boat engine, the echo of distant seagulls, the creak of wet boards beneath her feet. Marcus was there, wearing a dark coat, his face lined with years of exhaustion. He held a small metal case in his hand. "Is that it?" she whispered. He nodded. Inside, every report, every name, every video. Darius, the others, all of it. I kept copies hidden for years. If you go public with this, they can't bury it again. Rachel reached out to take it. Then let's end this. Before she could grab the case, headlights flared at the end of the pier. 2 black SUVs. Doors slammed. Marcus's eyes widened. They found me. Run. Rachel shouted. They sprinted down the dock, boots splashing through puddles. Shouts echoed, men in tactical gear, flashlights cutting through the fog. One of them yelled, "Stop. Federal order." Marcus didn't stop. He tossed the metal case toward Rachel. "Take it. Don't let them have it." She caught it, stumbled, and ducked behind a stack of crates. A gunshot cracked through the night. Marcus fell. Rachel screamed his name, but the sound was drowned by the crashing waves and the pounding of boots. She clutched the case, heart racing, and dove into the water just as the men reached the dock. The cold hit her like ice. She kicked downward, holding her breath, the metal case tight against her chest. Above, flashlights sliced through the fog, but they didn't see her. Not yet. She surfaced under a nearby boat, gasping quietly, water dripping from her hair. The SUVs eventually drove off, tires screeching into the night. Rachel climbed out, shaking, soaked to the bone. She looked back toward the dock. Marcus's body was gone. Only a smear of blood remained on the planks. She opened the metal case with trembling hands. Inside were files, some physical, others on a small encrypted drive. Names, photos, guard logs, video timestamps. One file was marked, Internal Directive 9B, Behavior Control Program. Rachel read the first line. Pelican Bay personnel authorized to neutralize high-risk inmates posing media or legal threats. She froze. Neutralize. That word wasn't supposed to exist in a justice system. She scrolled further. The same signatures appeared on every order. Warden. Supervising captain. And finally, a name that made her blood run cold. Director Raymond L. Monroe. The same man who had publicly denied any wrongdoing after Darius's death. Rachel stared into the fog, her mind racing. This wasn't corruption. This was murder disguised as justice. She knew what she had to do now. Release the files, expose the truth, and make sure the world finally saw Pelican Bay for what it really was. But as she turned to leave, a voice echoed from the shadows behind her. You weren't supposed to find that, Miss Mendez? Rachel spun around, and standing just a few feet away was Director Monroe himself, calm, hands in his pockets, eyes glinting under the pier lights. The man behind Pelican Bay's darkest secret had just found her. The fog hung heavy over the pier, turning every shadow into a ghost. Rachel froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Director Monroe stepped closer, his shoes echoing softly against the wet wood. I have to admit, he said calmly, you've caused quite the stir, Miss Mendez. Eli Navarro. Marcus Vega. Darius Cole. All good men who made unfortunate choices. Rachel gripped the metal case tight against her chest. Unfortunate? They're dead because of you. Monroe smiled faintly. They're dead because they thought justice was personal. But justice isn't a feeling, Miss Mendez. It's control. Rachel's pulse pounded. You call torture and murder control? He sighed. You don't understand what Pelican Bay is. It's not a prison, it's a pressure valve. The worst of the worst are sent there so the rest of the system can breathe. We keep the chaos contained. And yes, sometimes that means making difficult choices. Rachel stepped back, inching toward the end of the dock. You're justifying murder. I'm justifying order, Monroe said coldly. Do you have any idea what happens if those walls fall? The truth doesn't bring peace, Rachel. It brings fire. Riots. Panic. Politicians lose jobs. Families lose faith in the system. And people like you? He paused, studying her. People like you disappear. Her eyes narrowed. You think you can scare me? I don't need to, he said, taking another step forward. You already know what happens to those who talk too much. Rachel's mind raced. She glanced over the side of the dock. The dark water below was freezing, but it might be her only escape. She looked back at Monroe. You built Pelican Bay on lies. You turned justice into a weapon. And now you're afraid of your own creation. For the first time, his calm expression cracked. You're out of your depth. Rachel lifted the case slightly. Maybe. But the world's about to see what you've been hiding. Monroe tilted his head. You really think anyone will believe you? You think a few files will take down a system that's been untouchable for decades? Rachel's voice hardened. I don't need anyone to believe me. I just need them to see. At that moment, a faint red light blinked from her pocket. Her phone, still recording. The entire conversation. Every word. Monroe's eyes flicked toward it. He lunged forward. Rachel turned and ran. The dock thundered beneath her feet as she sprinted toward the end. Monroe's footsteps followed, heavy and fast. The rain came down harder, the sea roaring below. She clutched the case, the phone, everything that mattered. Stop. Monroe shouted. You have no idea what you're doing. Rachel didn't stop. She jumped. The cold water swallowed her whole. The shock nearly froze her lungs, but she kicked hard, forcing herself up through the waves. She could see lights on shore, Crescent City glowing faintly through the mist. Behind her, Monroe stood at the edge, watching. Then he turned and disappeared into the fog. Rachel swam until her arms felt like stone. When she finally reached the beach, she collapsed in the sand, coughing, shaking, but alive. The metal case was still in her hands. 2 days later, the story broke. When justice becomes a crime, leaked files expose abuse and cover UPS inside Pelican Bay Supermax. Every major network ran it. Rachel had sent the footage, Monroe's voice recording, and the documents to multiple outlets at once. There was no stopping it now. The files revealed a web of corruption, falsified reports, illegal punishments, deaths labeled as suicides. The behavior control program was exposed as a systematic abuse plan designed to silence inmates and protect staff from accountability. The country exploded with outrage. Protests erupted outside the prison. Lawmakers demanded hearings. Families of inmates came forward with stories eerily similar to Darius Cole's. And for the first time in decades, Pelican Bay was forced to open its doors to a full federal investigation. Rachel watched it all unfold from her small apartment in Los Angeles. Her bruises had faded, but the memories hadn't. The faces of Darius, Eli, and Marcus haunted her every night. Then one morning she received an anonymous package. Inside was a single photograph. A shot of Darius Cole standing in the prison yard, sunlight on his face. On the back, written in black ink, were the words, "You did it, Rachel smiled faintly through tears. She didn't know how Marcus's photo had found its way to her, but it was proof that truth, once freed, could never be caged again. As she looked out the window at the rising sun, she whispered softly, "Maybe justice isn't perfect. But it's only a crime when we stop fighting for it." The screen fades to black. The scream didn't sound human anymore. It tore through the concrete like metal scraping metal, echoing down the long, dead hallway of Pelican Bay's security housing unit. Inside one of those windowless cells, Darius Cole slammed his fists against the steel door until the skin broke and his knuckles bled. 11 years in solitary had taken almost everything from him. Sleep, sunlight, time, but not his voice. Not yet. "CO," he shouted, voice cracking. "Open the door. You can't do this." The only answer was the buzzing hum of the fluorescent light above his head. The tiny camera in the corner blinked red, watching. Recording. Judging. He pressed his ear to the slot in the door, trying to hear something, anything from the tier outside. Sometimes he could catch the faint sound of another man coughing, or the shuffle of boots, or a toilet flushing 10 cells away. Tonight there was nothing. Just the sound of his own breathing. Darius stepped back, chest heaving. His cell was the size of a parking space. Gray walls, a steel bunk, a metal toilet, a small concrete desk. No window. No bars. Just a solid steel door with a slot for food and restraints. He stared up at the camera. "You think I'm going to stop?" he said, voice low now. "You can break my body, but you're not breaking the truth." He wasn't always this angry. He wasn't always this broken. Once, Darius was the guy who walked kids home after school so they wouldn't get jumped. In his Oakland neighborhood, people trusted him. He helped elders carry groceries. He broke up fights when he could. But the system didn't care about that. When a gang shooting went bad and a cop got hit, detectives came looking for someone to blame. Darius refused to lie in court. He wouldn't point at a kid he knew was innocent. 2 days later, police raided his apartment. They found guns in the closet. They found a bag of drugs under his bed. Darius told the judge the evidence was planted. The prosecutor told the jury he was a dangerous leader. His public defender barely fought back. 15 years. No parole. And because the prosecutor called him high risk, he was sent straight to Pelican Bay Supermax. From the moment he stepped off the bus, he was treated like an animal. Hands cuffed, feet shackled, a black hood over his head. "Welcome to the end of the world," a guard whispered as they walked him down the SHU corridor. In Pelican Bay Supermax, there was no general yard. No real visits. No normal human contact. Darius spent 22 to 23 hours a day alone in that concrete box. His yard time was a small empty pen with high walls and a rectangle of sky if he craned his neck back far enough. It wasn't just punishment. It was designed to make him disappear. But Darius refused to vanish. He started writing. Using tiny golf pencils and scraps of legal paper, he wrote letters to anyone who might listen. Lawyers, news stations, human rights groups. He told them about inmates beaten in blind spots, about mail being lost, about guys who asked for help and then wound up, suicided. Most letters never left the unit, but a few did. One day he got a reply. A real one. A reporter from Los Angeles, Rachel Mendez, wrote back. "I got your letter. I believe you. I want to hear everything. Don't stop writing." For the first time in years, Darius felt a spark of hope. He wrote more. Names. Dates. Times. He described how guards would shut off cameras before cell extractions, how complaints vanished, how men who spoke up were moved to blocks where accidents happened. Then the threat started. One afternoon, during mail pickup, a correctional officer slid a folded note through his food slot instead of a letter. Inside, in blocky handwriting, it said, "You keep writing, you stop breathing." Darius stared at the words for a long time. His heart pounded, but he didn't rip the note up. He hid it under his mattress. Proof. The next week, his cell filled with ice-cold water in the middle of the night. Darius jumped up, feet splashing, watching his legal papers float away. He banged on the door, shivering, yelling for help. A guard walked by, looked in, and smirked. "Pipe must have burst," he said. He didn't call maintenance. He didn't bring towels. By morning, Darius's letters were ruined. Ink washed away. Months of work gone. He knew it wasn't an accident. From then on, every time he heard keys at his door, his chest tightened. Was it food? Was it a search? Was it payback? But he kept writing. He smuggled out what he could, one page at a time, using other inmates' outgoing mail, guys who still had family on the outside. Then one day things got worse. A group of officers came to his cell in riot gear. Shields, helmets, batons. "Cole, cuff up," one shouted. Darius backed up slowly, hands raised. For what? Refused orders. Inciting trouble, the guard snapped. He hadn't refused anything. He hadn't even left his cell. But they didn't care. They dragged him out, slammed him to the floor, and bent his arms until his muscles screamed. A knee pressed into his neck. Someone laughed. "Still think you're a hero, Cole?" After that, his body hurt all the time. But his mind stayed sharp. He wrote Rachel again. "If anything happens to me, tell my story anyway. Don't let them write the ending." Then came the night everything changed. It started quiet. No yelling. No movement. Just the distant hum of ventilation and the buzz of lights. Darius sat on his bunk, staring at the small patch of wall where he'd traced invisible lines just to feel like he was drawing something. He thought about the kids back home, about the lives that had moved on without him. Then he heard it, a faint click from the ceiling. He looked up. The red light on the camera went dark. Every muscle in his body turned cold. "Hey," he shouted, standing. "Camera's out. You're supposed to fix that." No answer. He heard footsteps, more than one pair, approaching his door. Heavy, slow, like they weren't in a hurry. "Cole," a voice said from the other side. "Come." Too calm. Time to stop causing trouble. Darius's heart hammered against his ribs. "I have a right to talk to my lawyer," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You turn that camera back on." The food slot opened with a metallic clank. A gloved hand slid through and grabbed his shirt, yanking him toward the door. His face slammed into the cold steel. Someone whispered in his ear. "You should have kept your mouth shut." What happened in the next 7 minutes would never show up on any official tape. Later, the record would say the camera malfunctioned. That staff responded, as quickly as possible. That Darius was found unresponsive in his cell. By the time the red light blinked back on, his body was on the floor, blood slowly pooling around his head. The incident report said suicide. Another inmate, another case closed. But it wasn't that simple. Because while his body lay inside that tiny concrete box, something else quietly slipped out of Pelican Bay's walls. In a mailroom across the state, a single thick envelope that had been delayed for weeks was finally dropped into an outgoing bag. It was packed with Darius's notes, copies of complaints, and a handwritten message on top. If you're reading this, it means they got to me. Don't let my death be the end. Make them see what they did. The envelope was addressed to one person. Rachel Mendez, investigative reporter. And when she opened it, far away in Los Angeles, she would discover that inside one of America's most secure prisons, justice had quietly turned into a crime.